Sorry, I'm just reading what's on the screen. Good evening, everybody. Local trade directories. I've been interested in them for 25, 30 years. And this is my little folder. Okay. Okay. Oh, of course it's being recorded, isn't it? I mean, zoomed. With just a few notes in it. And that's obviously a folder. Right. Before Yellow Pages, your fingers still did the walking. My interest began in the 1990s when I started looking through them, when I was doing mainly family history. The bulk of my family history is in Auburn and Ramsbury. So when were they invented, or when did they come into existence? The earliest known one is published by Samuel Lee in 1677. And they included much of the stuff that's found in guides these days. And some of the key features you're likely to find in old directories are the descriptions of the place, maps, listings for private residents, not so many in the early ones. It was mostly trades, traders and professions. Pardon? Details of important people, the landowners, JPs, MPs. They described how the community was connected to other communities by carrier, which was very important, rail or bus. Details of banks, post offices, adverts. Is this coming up?
Yes.
Right. These are the local directories that I have actually consulted. I have got photocopies of all the pages in there, and I have transcribed them all into a massive database. So the first one mentioning Auburn and Ramsbury is 1784. And it's this one, Bailey's. The whole directory everything was jumbled up. So you actually have to look and find where the Wiltshire bits are. There were 4 people mentioned in Ramsbury: James Blackman, who was a surgeon, John Isles, who was also a surgeon. Very, very important person, Henry Sly. He was an oil leather dresser and glover. And John Webb, who was a mercer, cloth merchant and shopkeeper. And the Webbs, after being in Ramsbury for 100 years or so, they moved on to Newbury. And this is what it says for the 2 Auburn entries. Surprise, surprise, Robert Wells, Auburn Foundry. And the other mention, it wasn't quite as it should have been. It said Esney and Co. Wits, but it should have been Edney. And they were listed as fustian and muslin manufacturers, which they probably were. I mean, the muslin part. The next one that has all the mentions is the Universal British Directory of Trade, Commerce and Manufacture of 1791. These directories were very often quite hefty, leather-bound volumes, and they're very difficult to come across now. Most county record offices have copies, and some of the local libraries do. And this is what it had to say about Auburn. Doesn't mention the 1777 fire. In fact, few of the directories do. And these were the principal inhabitants. Oh, beg your pardon. Principal inhabitants. Thomas Cook. Where is he? Terry. We'll know all about Thomas Cook. I know all about the Three Pizzes. Fustian manufacturing is heavily mentioned. So this helps you build up, these local directories help you build up a picture of the area where they're listed. The next local directory is Pigot's, and they've produced several over the years. And this is a facsimile edition, as you can see at the bottom, 1830. And it was for 5 counties, and Auburn and Ramsbury were very often put together, a bit like Ogbourne, St George, Ogden, and St Andrew, separate but always seem to be joined together. And here's the Auburn bit. So you get the bit about the church, the fire. At this time, there was a post office in Ramsbury, and John Woodruff was the postmaster. So if you wanted to send stuff, you had to trundle over to Ramsbury, and everything was dispatched from there by horse post. It was received and dispatched by horse post. Coaches, think not Barnes's. These are passenger coaches. And carriers. Carriers were very, very important. One from Ramsbury went with William Blagrove every Tuesday off to London, and to Marlborough every Wednesday and Saturday. Samuel Fowler trundled off to Marlborough Market. And this is where he linked. Most of these carriers had an agreement with hotels, inns in the place they were going to the market, and they had their horses and stuff stabled at these pubs, hotels. And the one that what's his name went to, the site of it's the old Rose and Crown. It's in 112 High Street in Marlborough. Can't quite place it, but it looks as if it's on the bottom of the High Street. And this is what they probably looked like when they were trundling heavy loads. Although this says the York wagon, it would have been fairly similar for over the country. This is probably more like the ones that were trundling around down here. And that's probably what most of the roads look like. Mm. And they went into all the market towns. I couldn't find, and I haven't got a postcard of Marlborough Market, so I've just included 2 that show you the width of the high street that would accommodate a large market. And there you've got the horse and wagon, a coach, and the lower one, a couple of wagons. The market at Marlborough was quite often attended because you could travel along the river valley. Very rarely did you come to Swindon because after a day in Swindon, you didn't want to climb all the way up the hill. Sadly, I couldn't find a picture of Hungerford Market, but this just gives you the idea, the width of the high street. So a lot of traffic from Auburn and Ramsbury went to Hungerford to the market. This is probably what it looked like. This is Newbury Market. And you can see covered wagons, you can see coaches, horses and carts, cattle. And this is just to show you the sort of thing that Marlborough Market might have looked like, and Hungerford Market ditto. This is Malmesbury, and if you know this area of Malmesbury, it would have been crowded with animals for sale, stalls with all sorts of things for sale. Ditto Chippenham. They just pitch up in the market square. Devices, and the people have turned up. They leave their wagons, coaches, chaises, and they stable their horses in one of the local hostelries. And probably one of the busiest ones was the one at Salisbury, as you can see from the huge lineup of carriers' carts. Right. Pigots from 1830. Oh, by the way, if you're interested in this, on the Heritage website, there is a transcript of the pigots for 1830. I've put the occupations in alphabetical order so that you can actually see more easily. You've got Bridgman, the bell founder. And the pink ones at the bottom. This is the Bell Inn, a long time ago. The Blue Boar, when all the roads were just pounded chalk. Crown. I must have missed one. No. And it also gave the local bigwigs. So here we have Crowwood House, which you can't see now. And it's a lovely looking building when you used to be able to go up Crowwood Lane and see it from the road. It's all planted with trees, you can't see anything. And Littlecote House. The Ramsbury entries are far more numerous, and the one I've highlighted here is William Rowland, the attorney, a solicitor. But if you notice, going down, there are boot and shoemakers, which we'll come to in a moment. And this is William Rowland. And the reason I've included this is because he just looks so lovely. See, he died in 1865. So this is a very old photograph. And he would have done the legal work for all the area around Ramsbury. And there he's using his quill pen. And in the other one, he's sitting, he's got, his trousers have got a loop under to hold them down under his shoe. And he married a local lady, one of the numerous neat family who spread out from Devizes. They were all over Auburn. Don't you just love her clothing? She's holding a pair of pince-nez. She's got a book on the table that she's been reading. I presume they all of that class of lady wore these sort of lacy, bonnety things. Still with the 1831, we've got Richard Hill highlighted and his sister Mary Ann. Now, Richard Hill married Rebecca Pizzey in 1796 in Auburn. And they as I expect you all know, ran Hill stores. Well, one here, it's Hill Brothers, because there were three of them, I think, that ran the shop. If we just go back to here and look at the occupations, we've got a furrier, glover and breeches maker. We have, no, that's all for that page. So we go on, there's Hill Stores, Hill Brothers. We have got quite a lot of shopkeepers, yeah, straw hat makers, but we do have tanners, saddler and harness maker. And if you look at the person who was the saddler and harness maker, you'll see that she is a lady. Now, from the 1830 Pigots, I've taken out the women and their occupation, the women that have been mentioned. So we've got 4 in Auburn, Grace Palmer, Mary Ann Brown, she is mentioned because she's the gentry, Anne Herring, Jane Lawrence, and Sarah Pierce, who ran the Blue Boar. And then underneath are all the ladies who were in occupation in Ramsbury. Mary White was the blacksmith. Harriet Day, saddler and harness maker. And you have the shopkeepers, which you would expect, straw hat makers, you would expect, and the mistress, the teachers of the mistresses of the school. Brewing related occupations in Auburn and Ramsbury. There are only 4 that could be classed as such in Auburn. Charles Gould, who was a maltster, as was Thomas May, as was Joseph Smith. And there were 2 publicans mentioned, the Bell and the Crown. Ramsbury, maltsters, Hazel and Edwards. We know that, don't we, Peter? This is the mill going out towards the manor, Edwards's mill. But we always called it Moons, didn't we? Yeah. So that did a lot of malt production. And then we have the publicans. We have the Bell Hotel in the square, which was a coaching inn, from the massive amount of space in front. And it was on the Marlborough to Hungerford section of John Ogilvy's road map of 1675, when the road passed through Ramsbury. Now, I don't think oh, it does. Marlborough's at the top. It's probably not very clear. Hungerford at the bottom. And the road that it's taking is starting here, Chiltern Foliot, all the way along here to Newtown and to Ramsbury. It didn't last that long because this road superseded it. It's the one going up through Savernake Forest. Landlord of the Bleeding Horse. The Burdett Arms. Does everybody know where the Burdett Arms was? Next to where the old doctor's surgery used to be. The old surgery used to be in there. The Windsor Castle. Does anybody remember it? The Malt Shovel. The Malt Shovel was just down and across from the Burdett Arms. Leatherworking occupations in Auburn and Ramsbury. Now you'll have a look. There are only 2 Auburn ones. Boot and shoemaker and a tallow chandler. There are quite a few Ramsbury ones. There are 3 boot and shoemakers, a currier, furrier, glover and breeches maker, the inevitable tallow chandler, saddler and harness maker, tanner, and a fellmonger. Now, in case some of you aren't familiar with what a fellmonger was, I've just put a little bit in here. It's a dealer in hides or skins, particularly sheepskins. Sometimes you have to find your information where you can find it. And this is from an advert in the Hampshire Chronicle of 1823. And it's an advert for the sale of a tan yard and brewery in Ramsbury. But it gives you some information on what had been going on in the local tan yard. Well supplied with water. Now, the reason there were more leather occupations in Ramsbury because you had the Kennet going along the bottom of the high street at the end of the gardens. And you needed lots and lots of water if you were in the leather trade. Well supplied with water, 4 lime pits, 2 grainers. I'm not entirely sure what a grainer is. 8 taps, 42 tan pits. It was a fair-sized tannery. Excellent drying shed, leather house, bark barns. Bark barns were for storing the bark which was used for tanning the leather. A mill house, a bark mill. You churned up, you ground up the bark and to put it in the water, and then it tanned the leather. Good stabling, a large yard and convenient buildings. And then they also, on the same place, I'm a little bit worried that they got brewing beer on the same site as this tan yard. Storehouses and all the brewing utensil store, travelling casks, new built malt house, Stock in trade to be taken at a fair valuation. The above is in the occupation of the owner, Mr. Ambrose Alexander, who we know there were a lot of Ambrose Alexanders. I think this one actually did live in Auburn. And there was one more advert I found which gave you an idea about tanning. The stock and implements incidental to a tan yard consisting of about 10 tons of very prime bark of 18, this is from 1829. This bark was gathered in 1827 from young maiden trees from the Vale of the White Horse. 10 hides in a nearly tan state, 20 dozen skins from the line pits, which removed all of the hair to a similar state. I'm not entirely sure what the two beams would be wanted for. Knives and apparatus, a skin pin block, wheelbarrows, 2 pumps, 3 chutes, horses' jets, hooks, baskets, 100 drying poles, which are well suited for raftering, cast iron striking beam, pins and mallets, a brown cart gelding, 1 horse tilted cart, etc. Sale to be peremptory. I don't know what some of those mean. I'm sure you all do. Quick look at what a tannery might have looked like. It would have smelt. It would have smelt quite badly. These look quite clean and tidy, and there's nothing on the floor. And this thing at the back is what they carried the skins on. It's in action there. And this is where the skins are being scraped to get all of the hair off. And this is peeling bark. I would have thought this killed the trees, actually. They're peeling off the bark and stacking it, and then it's stored, and then it's broken up for putting in the tan pits. Now we go on to 1867. This is a Kelly's directory. Kelly's were the most prolific directory publishers. And because that's a bit tricky to read, I have got all of these directory entries on a big database. I've got nearly 5,000 Auburn entries, and this is just a section of some of them. 67. So you'll probably begin to look at these and recognize some of the names. Terry, Cook, of course. Pardon? Yeah, you'll see it on the next page. Or not. And my interest is James, Henry James. And here's some Palmers. And a Pizzy.
Joseph was my great-grandfather.
Excellent. Shopkeeper. And then we go to 1897, and this is published by Lucy's. This is a photocopy of one of the pages of Lucy's directory. If you could pass that round. He was a Marlborough printer, and he did all sorts of printing, and then he started doing a directory. And here's from his page from his directory, printing up every description, E. Lucy. And that was his shop on the top side of the high street in Marlborough, which looks probably much as it does today. And inside his guide, he's telling you what he's including. Advertisements, indexes, the most important thing, the list of carriers, an almanac, adverts, a village directory, and information about the Somerset Hospital at Floxfield, information about Marlborough College, Marlborough in general, a directory of Marlborough, entries for the villages in the vicinity of Marlborough, starting at Auburn and finishing at Wootton Rivers. Notable features: railway fares table, cattle keepers table, and a list of mayors. And this is one of the very important pages. This is the list of carriers from Marlborough to wherever. And the one going to and from Auburn is Stacey, who's tied up with the cross keys. That's where he goes to when he goes to Marlborough, where he leaves his horses to rest and feed and water. And then he does it one day a week, and the time is 3 o'clock that he leaves Marlborough. Ramsbury is, oh, there were two. Somebody Denton goes to the Bear and Castle, and somebody Talmadge goes to the Angel. This probably wouldn't have been a carrier. This would have just been another going to the market, but picking up passengers on the way. This was a carrier's cart with raised for 2 horses. That's and those of you know the big belly oak. This is, they've stopped to pose for a picture coming from Marlborough with their cart. This is from Lucy's directory. This is an index to all the advertisements. Now, I looked all the way down. There are none for Ramsbury and none for Auburn there. But on the next page, there's one for Ramsbury, and it's Mrs. Pinniger, who is not well known. And this is her advert. Mrs. Pinniger, bookseller, stationer, bookbinder, and fancy warehouse, post office, Ramsbury. Now you'll notice all these adverts that he puts into his directory, he uses different fonts very frequently. It's to capture your attention so that people don't just go past it. And I can remember Mrs. Pinniger's shop. Can you, Peter? No, he can't. It's well, I was hoping you did. Going down the high street, the memorial hall is here. The old post office is there, and Mrs. Pinniger's shop is this bow window one there. And the reason I can remember it is when is it not coming on there? Oh, in that case, I'll just go to this.
Again, Julie, you just ordered.
Goodo. Okay. Can you, is the pointer showing? Why not?
Is it? Yeah. If you wanted to. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it is. The last shop on the left-hand side, can you see the trees in the far end?
Yeah.
That is the old post office. If you can remember the old post office.
No, you've got the pointer.
Oh, okay.
Red block. You go up into the room, go into the picture, you see a red block. Okay,
this was the old post office, and the memorial hall is on the other side of the road beyond that row of houses. Mrs. Pinniger's is there. And the reason I know that that's Gilbert Mills, the butcher's old shop, I know it because when I was yay high, I used to go with Mum to the memorial hall where the weekly clinic for children, mums and children, was held. And for some reason, I was sent across to Mrs. Pinniger's to buy something or give something. And I remember going into the shop. And that's the only memory I have of Mrs. Pinniger. Anyway, if you look carefully, you can see either side of the road, it's the little pebble stones. No, they're not cobbles. They're little tiny stones set in. Going up to from the crown up to the green, on the left-hand side, it's the same thing. It's before it was taken up and pavements put in. That's what acted as the pavement. Now, I think this advert has gone round. Again, different font for most of the writing. Now, Mondays, they used to go out round all the villages. Did anybody remember it? Oh, hallelujah. They used to cut, Mr. Wiltshire used to come round with a suitcase of shoes, slippers, and he used to show you what he'd got. Yes, I'll have that, but I need the size this. And then you could order whatever you want. And then the next time he came round, he used to bring what you'd ordered. And his shop, Mr. Mundy's shop, was somewhere there, if you can remember it. Ben Lloyd used to advertise. Again, different fonts to grab your attention. Imperishable lead letters inserted. Old tombs renovated and re-lettered. Right. 4 publicans in Auburn. And here's the list of occupations. The Queen Victoria. The boar. The bell. Don't you just love the cows nonchalantly wandering? The Blue Boar. The Masons is the only pub that I don't have a postcard of. Sorry. But anyway, that's where the Masons is. Isn't it nice to see it completely empty of cars? 1897. Okay, here are the names and here are the occupations. And very importantly, Lydiard was a carrier. Shepherd was a carrier. He went to Newbury, to Hungerford daily. He also went to on a Thursday, he went on to Newbury. And Lambden, he was a carrier to Swindon. They did have one carrier a week, one carrier who used to go to Swindon, because by that time Swindon was actually growing, so it was probably worth his while going there. And then you've got all the other occupations in the village, as you can see. But this time we've got farmers mentioned for the first time. William. And a couple of farmers had a second job as well, chairmaker and a willow cutter.
His pet was a farmer in Browning.
Yeah. He probably ran the pub and then hired land, rented land, or shared it with somebody. Okay. Arthur Wood, the jockey. Know it, Terry? No. Okay. Mail was coming from Lambourne. Not quite sure why. Frederick Alt was a photographer actually living in Auburn at that time. And this is one of his postcards. And I've only put this one in because it's before Jerram's house was extended. And he's also spelled Auburn wrongly. How much time do I have left? Not long. Kelly's, the most common directory publisher, and this is from 1939. Again, this isn't leather bound, but it's a big, sizable book. You get the usual where the parish is, information of the where it is, the courts, the sessions, the political stuff, and then you've got the stuff about the church and a bit more of the Methodist chapels, the charities, and then most of all there's the carriers, Tom, Dixon, Barnes, and the conveyance, which is the first time. They're motor omnibuses running between Swindon and Hungerford 3 times daily. And here's the, I have put these in alphabetical order of occupation so that you can see them. I expect many of you recognize these places. And for the first time, apart from the address, the telephone number is shown. So there weren't that many people that you could phone. You still had to go and knock on the door. Right, William Palmer, boot repairer. And this is his shop at the bottom of Castle Street. Nice and quiet. Smithfield House with the butcher's shop and an overflowing pond. And this is the house now enlarged, the house of the captain of the fire brigade, A.V. Jerram, and the old fire station. It wouldn't be an Auburn talk if you didn't have this picture in it. And it's such a shame that that has been chiseled out. It wasn't doing anybody any harm.
The date's still on there, but not the.
I shall have to have words with my cousin. And this is another bit of the 39 directory. And you'll see Miss Oliver, the nurse, the district nurse, who used to live in Lottage Road, because just down here, Kay's Cottage. She called it Kay's Cottage because it was Kate. So it was Kay's Cottage. It's where Grandma Ludlow lived. So you've got the farmers, and then you've got the farmers who are farming over 150 acres. Now, Ralph would be interested in this because letters to the Hardings that all of Liddington Warren went to through via Wombre. Clifford Brown. Who else remembers Clifford Brown? Yeah.
Is Hitler still living in Ipswich? John Brown, I think is.
I don't know. I don't know.
He's in touch with us.
Okay.
But the telephone numbers, we've actually still got the same thing.
Oh, have you?
To the 3 to the. They added a 3 before the 2, and then a 5, and then a 4, and then a 5. So we are still 5403, and then the 283.
Oh, great. Oh, these bring back memories. Lens. Yes. And we have more and more private entries that people that the directory collectors deemed were important enough to or needed to be put in the directory. This is moving on. This is the Swindon and District Directory of 1948. And this time we just get a bit more information about the address rather than just Auburn. George Dew. Terry, do you know what the agricultural depot Wharf Cottage is?
Wharf Cottage, the Greys have that Castle Street on the right hand side, just above Dudley Cottage.
Yes.
I think that was Wharf Cottage.
Yeah, but I don't quite know what the agricultural depot part of the address is.
The Grey have.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is the last bit of the 48 directory.
There's lots on there.
Yeah, but he was actually in Ramsby Parish because that's where that Grills man now lives. You must have known Mr. Wood and Andrea. Yeah. And the very last directory is the, I think it's, 1965, but this is just the last little section, because by now everybody's being listed. And it's a bit boring if you just got, well, to you it is, but to me, I just love it. And if you look here, That was Ted Watts, my dad's brother. That's my dad. And that's, yeah, my grandfather's second wife.
The A Watts at the top. Julia,
I don't know who he is.
Arthur Watts, I don't think any nation, but he had a little shop in the butts. Around that waterfront.
And he lived in West Street, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he lived in a little house around the street.
Yeah. Oh, right. I don't know who this is. Okay. And those are all the directories I've tracked down so far. Apart from the Pigot's directory, there's also a transcription of the 1911 Kelly's directory on the Auburn website. And if you're really, really interested, there's this little gem, and it's called Rural Community History from Trade Directories. And when I started this way back in the 1990s, late 80s, and this came out in 2001, and I got very excited and I had to make a special order for it. How sad is that? And that is the end of what you can find in trade directories.
Thank you so much, Julia. Isn't it amazing, the trades and the people who are in Auburn and Ramsbury, you know, two villages only 3 miles apart, and they had shops and occupations of people with places today 10 times or more.
Yeah.
And here we are, it's captured. And this is so important, that what we do as a Heritage Group, we're filling in all the time with what's happened in the past, and we're gradually, you know, getting more and more information. And this is exactly what we like to see, and I hope everybody else as well. Particularly the people who've been in the village all their lives, like Andrea, and she relates to a lot of this. I know she does, because I do. But also people who've moved into the village, and I'm sure that, you know
what's going on.
Yes, you can see what's been happening, and you can see that we're trying to carry this history forward so that it's never lost. It'll never be lost, I don't think, even with this day and age of, you know, this sort of thing and this sort of thing.
Yeah. And this little folder is all, whenever I found a local directory that has got Auburn and Ramsbury in it, I took photocopies and then I bring them home and do them. It's quite weighty, and that's all the stuff
And she's
relating to it.
She's got a husband who's interested as well. I think he is. He's got no option really.
No.